Welcome back to Who Doesn't Have a Podcast, everybody. Here with Michael Priestley. Yourselves.
Did you just fall over?
Did Jerome fall over?
Yeah.
Three strikes and you're out, Jerome. What were we saying before this recording?
Is there an earthquake in Southampton?
Because I didn't hear any of it. But hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here again for this next episode of Who Doesn't Have a Podcast.
You have to introduce yourself. You have to say your name.
Oh, God.
Fucking hell, isn't it?
That's better. All right, I've got you now. I don't know what was happening.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
I love that.
It's all right. We can edit all this out. It's fine.
Those of you listening, Jerome just slayed on camera.
I said you have to introduce yourself. You said, "Oh right," and then didn't do anything.
I love the air of mystery. Right, it's all right. I sorted out my headphone situation.
I'll introduce you, Jerome. Dan, you going to introduce yourself?
I'm Dan.
Got all the energy of like a Blue Peter presenter. Right, what are we talking about? Let's get serious. This is serious.
Yes.
Doctor Who, obviously.
Is that what it is?
That's a good start.
Right. We
can edit all of this out for everyone listening on the audio.
We's doing a lot of heavy lifting there, Jerome. So we missed the days that there's 3 weeks in a row where Doctor Who was dropping weekly episodes, and then the Christmas special. We were supposed to set ourselves some homework. We didn't. So I thought, let's just discuss the 60th anniversary as a whole, what our expectations were versus reality, how we feel it all went. Jerome, I'm going to drop you in the deep end. You can start.
60th anniversary. So I think it's important we paint the scene. Where were we? What was Doctor Who before the 60th anniversary? And I'm glad you've come to me for this one, Mike. Because
what Jerome's doing right now is he's padding for time.
No, I'm not padding. I just want to put it out there that it's like we all thought, I think it's fair to say, from the trailers and from the info that was coming out, the Toymaker was going to be the overarching villain of the three, which it turned out wasn't the case. And I thought that was a nice little ploy. As we all know, the overarching villain for about 3 years has been Chris Chibnall. But it kind of went in I'm never working on Doctor Who. I'm very aware of it.
Right. Sorry to cut you off, right? I was thinking about this the other day. If this podcast was to ever make any traction, right? If we were to ever get any viewers or any listeners, and we would start to get a bit known in the Hugh community and we got to do like interviews and stuff, I'm not saying that would happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. You've got a lot of explaining to do to Chris Chibnall. All right.
Yeah, I feel like at this point, it's either there's going to be a hell of a lot of censorship on my end that I'll have to pay for, or I'm just going to double down. I think at this point we've reached a crux in the road. Anyway, moving on from my best friend Chris. So the 60th anniversary, I thought here's a question I want to ask you. Someone asked me recently, which did you prefer, the 50th or the 60th? And this is a question I think is quite interesting because we watched the 50th together. So I think this is quite an interesting comparison. Obviously, the main differences are there was one episode just for the 50th where there has been 3 for the 60th, or would you count the Christmas special? I'd probably say it was 3 episodes and then a Christmas special. But I know they've all kind of felt like they've sort of blended into one a little bit. But I enjoyed the 60th. I thought it was different to what I thought it was going to be, for sure. It felt more like a collection of the greatest hits in the sense that they were 3 singular episodes that kind of celebrated David Tennant and Catherine Tate and the Dr. Donna relationship. And I didn't mind that. I didn't think that's the way it was going to go, but I didn't mind that. But I think in terms of outright enjoyment and nostalgia, the 50th might have picked it for me. But they, I mean, that was so like, there was so much kind of throwbacks all over the place and nostalgia and kind of like rolling out the red carpet and multiple doctors. But yeah, what about you guys? That's kind of my overriding feeling, I think.
I actually agree with all of that. Yeah, I did enjoy the 50th more, to be honest. I thought the 60th were going to be kind of one long story told over 3 episodes, as opposed to like a mini series, which is what Russ Davis started to refer to it as. I enjoyed the 50th more as a sort of like a tightly wound plot, which I think really balanced fan service with telling a really original Doctor Who story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did just prefer it more. I wasn't let down by the 60th. There's so much good in the 60th. Actually, like on review, looking back at it, I think Wild Blue Yonder specifically is, if that is kind of like an indication of where Doctor Who is going in terms of its like ideas and its episodes, then I think we're in for a really good ride. I think we're going to go into a golden age of Doctor Who again. But the 50th more for me. You said last episode or a couple of episodes ago that the 50th is a bigger deal, I guess, isn't it? And I think I kind of let myself down a little bit by going into the 60th expecting the same level of. We're not going to get that again until the 100th anniversary of Doctor Who. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
I don't. Do you want to bring Dan in at this point? But there's something I want to say into that. But Dan, do you want to come in?
No, Dan's the one who waits. Dan's the one who waits.
Yeah,
I still don't know what that means.
You've watched the episode? Oh, hold on. Yeah, you've watched the episode. What do you mean? You don't know what that means?
But he doesn't know what it means. It's very sus. I feel like he wants us to be in for the long haul here, Mike.
The toy maker in the giggle just drops when he's having that card game with the 14th Doctor. Says, "There's the one who waits," and then he kind of leaves it aside. He's like, I looked in your universe, I played with the Master, I did all these things, and then I found the one who waits, and that's someone else's story. He says something like this. It's better written than what I just did. But,
is there a worry here? And this is there's no pre-questioning on this. This is just me right now in the moment. Is there a worry here that this is going to be another like mad theory kind of fest sort of thing, where it turns out to just be another version of like the Doctor? Because there's been moments before where there's been like different names. No, hang on. There's been different names.
We're seconds away from Jerome name dropping the Valiard. We're seconds away.
But there's no. I'm not going to do that, because I'm speaking as this as a worry rather than an absolute celebration of one of the best kind of storylines ever in Doctor Who. But like, you know how like in like you know, when there's been like mystery reveals about the Doctor, I'm thinking like Matt Smith, Name of the Doctor, where John Hurt was revealed as the War Doctor, or different kind of versions of like that character. Do you think it might be a sort of false kind of thing, or do you reckon it is just a completely new character or someone who's yet to be revealed? For the audio listeners, they're deep in thought.
I don't know. I think for that sort of thing, it has to be somebody that's got like weight as a character, I think, or it could be someone completely new. Honestly, I'm like, I don't know. I've thought for a long time that Doctor Who needs good, new, returning villains. So it could be that.
Dan, how about you?
I haven't got a clue. I don't know. I feel like in the way that we've seen Doctor Who kind of grow and evolve in the last decade or so I've heard, there will be plenty more twists and turns. Well, I've read the wiki page, and no, I don't know, unless it's another Time Lord. Maybe he wasn't the only one. Maybe there was one that was lurking in the shadows for a long period of time. We obviously had You Are Not Alone, which ended up being like the Master and the whole story. Yana. So could it be another play on that? Maybe, perhaps. You never know. I just think it's kind of opened the door to a lot of exciting things, because obviously Russell T Davies brought Doctor Who back from the dead, and it's looking at now he's got the reins again. He's just going to take it to a whole new direction once again. So if it expands upon that.
Did you prefer the 50th or the 60th?
Well, I love the 60th because it was just that wash of nostalgia. Seeing like my favourite Doctor or favourite actor as a Doctor back in that role, seeing one of my favourite sort of assistants there as well. It was fantastic, and I'm not kind of discrediting that at all. But I think from a surprise factor, I think the 50th just gave that a little bit more. Like the fact that you had Tom Baker in there, you had obviously the 3 Doctors, you had Rose back in it as well. You had the little like glimpse in the eyes of the following Doctor, whose name has Peter Capaldi, who, and it was more of a spectacle because it was that kind of, do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't just like I don't know. I feel like because back then, something like the 50th, you had to be there to experience it in the moment, whereas now there's the rise, like it's always on demand stuff, Disney Plus and stuff like that. You can just watch it whenever you want to. The fact that we were all gathered around a small TV screen in our uni halls in Manchester and we're sharing in that moment, like just like everyone else was around the world, nothing kind of matches that scale of excitement and thrill.
Mm. I remember being very, very excited for that. That was such a good night.
Oh, it was phenomenal. Yeah. And so as the 60th was fantastic, and the fact that we got 3 specials out of it was, again, an unexpected surprise. However, I just think from the scale and the fact that there was such genuine excitement, because the only thing the 50th reminds me of is almost like watching Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Where it was just that, it was that occasion and like that kind of communal like surprise and excitement and just that rush of euphoria that the 60th had, but not in the same scale as the 50th.
Well, it's interesting now reviewing them both, isn't it? Because they are completely different beasts, and they were obviously designed to be. And because it's what Jerome was saying, I think it's because the 50th was the 50th. I mean, that's it's insane that a show had gone on that long before, and a sci-fi show at least. So I think it's a sci-fi show about like a maniac in a blue box. It's insane, isn't it? So, it was so good. And from the gate, the 50th came out swinging with its old school original title sequence and the effects. Yeah, amazing. And the 60th was obviously lesser than it was a nostalgia fest for the Russell T Davies era, really, wasn't it? Like, I don't know. I just went into it expecting that it wouldn't be that. I thought it would be more, I don't want to say anniversary like. Do you know what I mean? I thought it was going to be more like, I thought we'd see previous Doctors, for example, that kind of thing. But now in review, it was. I mean, if you enjoyed David Tennant and Catherine Tate when they were in Doctor Who, then this is the anniversary for you, isn't it? So,
I think you raise an interesting point as well about occasion. I think that's a massive thing. In terms of where you were when you watched it, which in a way is out of the control of the broadcasters or like the episodes themselves, but how you watch it, who you watch them with. Like, for example, if I'm watching it with my family and stuff, and it's more like a background thing where some of them are paying attention, some of them aren't, some of them are on their phone, or it's kind of like, there's text going off in the background. Maybe that can infer the way you treat things. Or like, for example, when I watched it with you guys, like the 50th, and we were all crowded around that, in that small room and kind of watching it and enjoying it. Like there's that feeling of sort of occasion and excitement, and you're kind of it's the anticipation of what's going to happen, I think. But I was going to say on top of that as well, Mike, what you were saying about, maybe I shouldn't have been excited for the 60th compared to the 50th. I think there's a point in that, but also actually the more you think about it, this show's just been absolutely bankrolled now by Disney. So actually the expectation should be there. Do you know what I mean? To expect kind of them to roll out the red carpet more. And I think with that comes its own challenges of well, you've got to be new, you've got to, you know, try and do different things all the time. Like, I do think this is a problem with Doctor Who. It's just like recurring villains. Like, the Daleks are always going to be seen at some point because they are so ingrained in the history of the show, but they have been used to death. Like, they're not, you know, they do come across like they're on so many memes now and so many parodies and all of these things. And they, of course they would be. They've been around, you know, since 1963 pretty much. But like, all you need to find ways to, like you say, bring in new villains, bring in new iconic kind of settings and parts to the show. But I think that expectation can keep going up because, you know, Disney's changed the game really in terms of the finance and the tools and the creatives and all sorts that the show's now going to have access to. There is going to be a bigger, you know, it's going to bring a whole new wave of audiences, isn't it? Like, there's going to be a whole new kind of brand to the show, which I think will be interesting.
But I believe they're building that around Ncuti, Gatwa and Millie Gibson, though. I think that the true Disney partnership, I might be chatting complete shit here, but the true Disney partnership started with that Christmas episode. So they obviously, I think I read an interview with Russell Davis where he described the people at Disney like really loving the 3 specials and helping distribute the 3 specials, but it wasn't until the Christmas special that true partnership had actually kicked in. So I don't know what that means in terms of finances or whatever, because you can see Disney not really wanting much of a, maybe, I don't know what I'm talking about, but maybe they wouldn't want so much of a nostalgic element in their Doctor Who because they are, like you say, trying to just establish Doctor Who as a worldwide brand for now swathes upon swathes of new audiences that are going to come to it through Disney Plus. So they might not want that kind of nostalgic element to it.
And also, as like, without making this an economy podcast, like, we have to be aware that it's like there's always going to be a commercial drive behind this. Do you know what I mean? Like, more than anything. And I think that, you know, it's going to be a case of how they can like make it that successful worldwide on what should be quite an easy task because it is a very successful, very beloved show.
Yeah.
Dan, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I think following from what you said, I think Disney, much in the same ways they kind of have monopolized a lot of the sort of cinematic game, with obviously like with Marvel and Star Wars and a whole load of other stuff as well. Doctor Who's going to be like a new arm in that kind of armor of sort of kind of like hold they have over the industry, and which is very exciting. Like you say, you've got this new kind of creative input, you've got this new financial benefit. Like, the sky's the limit now for Doctor Who, and like you said, it's going to be a whole new generation. And in the 60th specials, we saw a bit of insight into obviously like, you know, you can draw like screens with his sonic screwdriver and a whole load of other stuff. Like, it's going to go into this completely new chapter of infinite possibilities. The interesting thing I'd love to see is there was a lot of talk soon after the 50th where a lot of people were sort of talking about Doctor Who maybe needing that little sabbatical, if you like. It maybe needed a bit of a break just to kind of like cool off and
I remember
not kind of go a bit, because I think the only fear with Doctor Who, and I don't, and I pray to God, I don't think Disney would allow it to happen, nor would the BBC anyway, because it is still their baby at the end of the day. There's always that kind of danger that Doctor Who could go in a similar route to likes of Marvel, where you kind of have the big build up and the big, well, hey, here's the anniversary, here's everything that's been leading up to, and then as a result of trying to capitalize upon that popularity or that occasion, there's then a whole slew of new content out that kind of waters it down a bit. And I hope that's not the case, because Doctor Who's always been that kind of stalwart character that's been there for generations. And Rusty Davis really did kind of populate it and popularize it again. And I've no doubt that Disney will be like 2.0 of that. My only worry is, are we going to see a lot of spin-offs and stuff? I mean, again, we had Torchwood, you had the Sarah Jane Adventures, you had a whole lot of other stuff, and it all worked because it was part of that. It was very like significantly done. And this was a good 10 years before, you know, the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe kicked off as well. So it was really ahead of its time. I've just got this slight worry that Disney may want to do something similar of their own, and then it just kind of blows out into something bigger than it maybe should be.
You know, back when they were doing those original spin-offs, you know, the pre or the Marvel stuff, just like what you were saying. It was scrappy though, wasn't it? Like it was scrappy, and at the time it looked amazing. But now I go back and watch Torchwood. I mean, especially those first two series, not so much Children of Earth, and I'm like, oh, it's scrappy. Like they've pulled this together, you know, by the bootstraps. We should do maybe our next podcast actually should be talk, because I think that's a really interesting topic actually, Dan. What has happened to Marvel, and how can they avoid doing it to Doctor Who? Because Marvel, I'm sorry, is a bit on its knees at the moment in terms of the amount of content they're putting out and the amount of success they're having with it. And we don't want Doctor Who to go the same way.
And
so
the thing is, because
do?
Exactly, because it's such a livable brand as well, and there clearly is an audience for it even after all these years, and there will be an even greater audience as a result of the 60th and indeed Ncuti Gatwa's kind of reign at the Doctor now. I think it's such an easy opportunity for Disney to kind of really take advantage of, because you've seen it with Star Wars, you've seen it with Marvel. I don't know, and again, it's still early days, and obviously they're partway through series 2 now, and we're not too sure what to expect. I mean, we already know that series are going to be shorter themselves. Hopefully that makes them more epic and more exciting, and you never know. Or is that again, I'm completely shooting in the dark here, could that be like, well, here's an 8-episode series, but David Tennant's still here, he's got his own little spin-off with Catherine Tate, that's still going to be its own thing. What about this previous assistant? What about they? Like, because it could be this whole kind of what if, because they could easily do the whole what if Marvel thing with the Doctor characters and Daleks and all that kind of thing. But if you mentioned before, Mike, as well with and Jerome as well with the Daleks and stuff like that, as much as they are universally appreciated and admired baddies, and we all have a good baddie, and you know, the Daleks are one of those, like, you think of Doctor Who, that's the first baddie you think of, up there with the Cybermen.
And Chris Chibnall if you're Jerome.
But you just want it, I don't know. I hope there's plenty of opportunity for fresh and new ideas, and we're not just having to rehash old characters to the point where we just become very tired and fatigued. I hope there's opportunities there, and there's hope. And I'd like to think with Russell T Davies, he will definitely kind of go back into the toy box, if you like, and pull out some of those old characters that we've maybe not seen in a very long time and reinvigorate them for a modern audience. But again, only time will tell, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, ultimately, like, the jury's out. Like, until Disney kind of have their first full series with Ncuti and Millie underway, like, the jury's out. I know, shout out to Piers.
I meant to ask, what did Piers make of his cameo shout outs?
He had to listen to it as he's wrong.
I told him that I meant to mention his name once, and he got about 8 to 9 shout outs, and this was from across the gallery floor. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, he just threw his arm into the air in quite a heroic fashion. So I think he's thrilled. It's terrific.
Well, you would be. To be on this podcast, you would be thrilled.
Oh yeah.
But what I was getting, I think with Disney, we'll see. But we were saying, like, there's been elements that have been revealed already with the Christmas special, like what it might seem to be. The sort of fantasy element Russell's been very open about in terms of, like, that's kind of coming. It's going to be more exploring in that kind of territory. The musical stuff, obviously, like, there seems to be a new big bad that's going to be musically inclined, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think the worry is that when you think of musicals or music or whatever, and you think of Disney, you do think of, like, animated, do you know what I mean? Kind of like Frozen and all of the kind of things that are coming through, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. I think if it's executed well, it could be quite good, but I think it's going to be a test. It's going to be a real test of how that goes down. But, you know, until we get evidence of that, or we get a full series under belt, it's like, yeah, let's see what they do. You know, I think it should be good. There should be a high expectancy, but
definitely
it'll be interesting.
You know, the whole fantasy element of the new series, was that Russell T Davies' own decision, or was that something that was brought upon by another party? Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, it was my decision.
Was it yours? You bastard.
I was like, make them sing. I like your goblins, but they need to sing. That's what I said.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. Maybe
You
one
actually
day-
just
wanted. You
interesting
actually.
scenarios.
You famously once said you wanted David Tennant's regenerated hand to sing. You wanted it to have its own kind of 2-minute cameo where it just did a sort of rock ballad from the 80s.
Yeah, I did.
We disappointed when it didn't.
My New Year's resolution was to just let things die.
It's very good.
Spin-offs, right? So
Yeah.
I think the way that they might approach them is, I get your concern, and I think it's a bit weird actually if you've got the main series running alongside a David Tennant, Catherine Tate spin-off. Like, I get that. I think the way they might be doing it is have the spin-off center on the peripheral characters in the main series, like your Kate Stewarts, but have different doctors be interacting within those series. Because I'd love to see Peter Capaldi go up in, I don't know, the rumored spin-off. Have you heard about the rumored spin-off, the Silurian one? The
No.
working title apparently is called The War Between the Land and the Sea. And I remember a few months ago, there was a rumor that Russell T Davies was interested in bringing Paul McGann back. So, I'd love episode 4 of this spin-off about the Silurians. Suddenly the Doctor shows up, but it's Paul McGann. I think that's a great way of having multiple Doctors exist in this universe without undermining the main series and the main Doctor and the main companion.
Are the Silurians in it, or do you mean the Sea Devils, or is it both?
I embarrassed myself. I meant the Sea Devils.
Well, everyone, thanks for joining the podcast today. We're going to take this one out so we can lambast Mike for his errors. We'll see you.
Yeah,
to be fair, I didn't know if it was, but that would actually be quite cool if it was the Sea Devils and the Silurians, because they're kind of based underground. That would have been a very interesting battle, but it's not. No worries, Mike. No worries.
But I think that's how they're going to do this. I hope that's how they do the spin-offs, and then I think that's a good way of. But I think let's talk about this in our next podcast. But I think they shouldn't dilute it by doing too much all at once.
Agreed.
Was it 2021, 2022 where Marvel released, I don't know, like 15 projects in a year, and it just felt like as soon as one had finished, you were moving on to the next one. And even for someone like myself, I watch all of this as much as I can. I'm not watching What If season 2. Dan, Jerome, I'm not doing it. I might not watch Echo. You know what I mean?
I think what was good in the pattern, again, I know this isn't a Marvel podcast, but I think what was good with the original run of films was that you could, in theory, miss a film and watch another film or see something later on, and it would still all make sense. Now it seems that if you miss that one episode of WandaVision or was it like Moon Knight or whatever the other ones are, you miss out on full plot lines, and do you know what I mean? That major crucial points of films is ruined because if you didn't see that, you're not going to get this. So almost, I don't know.
Do you think that? Sorry, Jerome. Hold on. Sorry, I'll go. Dan, do you think that you might have missed out on some major plot lines when you stopped watching Doctor Who when David Tennant left and only started again when David Tennant came back?
Yes, I do. But I feel like the difference with this is that it didn't ruin the experience of watching the 60th. So you could still enjoy it. It was still like their own standalone episodes. They still stood up, and you could still enjoy, again, the sort of nostalgia of it, if you like.
Because I remember when we watched the 50th, obviously you hadn't watched it since The End of Time Part 2. So when Matt Smith came on, you went, "Who the fuck is that?
That's not my Doctor." Why's he got a big chin?
And then when David Tennant arrived, you took your pants off and went.
I helicoptered my heart out in that room.
And it was small as well, so we all got slapped in the face. It was a small room.
It was like Braille. Yeah.
Mike, I think we should in about a month's time, maybe 3 months' time, we should hold a quiz for Dan that is specifically from series 5 right the way through to what was it? I think Capaldi's last one, maybe series 11, series 12. And maybe it should just be an exam quiz where it's just like, I don't know, Matt Smith, discuss, and that's it. That's the one question.
You know what we should do? We should make a quiz for Dan with actual plot elements as one of the answers, and then we make up the other plot elements, and he has to guess which one.
Oh my God.
Should we do
Cool.
that?
We could definitely do that.
You know what? I think that would be a good thing. If the more of these we do, we should do like a quiz, a Doctor Who quiz, where we pit the 3 of us against each other. Maybe we would bring someone in to host the quiz, and then we can have that could be a true battle of Time Lords trivia. That'd be big stuff.
That'd be big stuff. That would be big stuff.
And I think it should all be on the wedding of River Song.
You know, I also wanted to end this one by talking about what are our predictions for the next series of Doctor Who? If we have
Great
any.
that you asked this. So, special mention, the Valiard. The Valiard at some point.
Dan, do you know who the Valiard is? Do you know who the Valiard is?
I don't know, but already I hate it.
The Valiard and Jerome, cut me off.
No, you explain. You explain what the Valiard is, because I can't wait to hear this.
The Valiard is an evil version of the Doctor that was supposed to appear between, I think, the 12th and final version of the Doctor. Jerome's nodding.
No, well,
that right?
Not entirely, but you're not far off. So the Valiard was like another being from I'm not sure if they're Gallifreyan, but they were kind of involved in Gallifreyan politics. And basically, they had struck a deal with the Time Lords to say that they would basically steal the Doctor's remaining regenerations, specifically at the point, like up to leading, they would steal the rest of the Doctor's regenerations, and at the point that the 12th Doctor was the kind of meeting their end, that being would kind of fully have formed as the Valiard. So like the Valiard would almost take over the Doctor's entire being, personality and such. And it got a little convoluted on that sense, but what was really interesting was that it looked at the idea of the manifestation of the Doctor's darker sides and kind of how that would play out. And in fairness, all jokes aside, basically the Valiard's been present in a lot of New Who because we've seen a lot of the darker versions of the Doctor at points. So every time they, like the Time Lord Victorious is probably one of the closest aspects you would get to what the Valiard was, or Toby Jones's Dream Lord, which I think was basically the Valiard. I think Stephen Moffat was just like, I'm going to call it a different name so that we don't get into the whole politics of like 30 years of Doctor Who and people going mad. Like, I think like he just decided to call it a different character. But I think like the theory, the character's become a bit of a joke because it's like it's there's so many theories and rumors and all sorts going on. But then they mentioned it in one of the Christmas episodes. They fully named him, and I was like, it's definitely on their brainwave somewhere. And if someone can come up with a good storyline, it's there. Or genuinely, it's there waiting to be done if they can come up with it.
No, I think it will. I think it's untapped potential. The reason I roll my eyes at it sometimes is for 2 reasons. I think that when the Valiard appeared in Classic Who, it was an episode set in a courtroom, like a Gallifreyan courtroom, where he was arguing the case against the Doctor. Give me a break. Give me a break. Right.
Mike,
he's supposed to
I'm
be
taking Doctor Who in a court over the Ting 9 times out of 10. Right? You can give me that any day.
I like the Ting.
Against the Absorb.
And
that's not what you said off camera.
The other thing is Dan and anybody listening is Jerome's theory for everything, his like theory of everything, like Stephen Hawking, is that the Valiard is behind everything. You know, like Jerome thought that the Valiard was in the 50th so hard he would have put a mortgage on it. So like it, you know, mad. But I do agree with you. I think the Valiard is untapped potential, and actually, if you are trying to, like we were saying before about the one who waits, right? If you are trying to have a villain that is unknown but also has that classic potential for like older fans, the Valiard might be might be the way to go.
I think, I think it's an interesting theory, but I think maybe one of the episodes, like we were talking about classic Who episodes, weren't we? And I think at some point we need to watch, if not all of that core like episodes, we should watch some of it together and like have a think about it. But there's a couple of other episodes I think we should do. One of my particular favorites, and this is on a tangent, so I'll keep it completely very brief, is the end of, I believe it's Dragonfire with Sylvester McCoy in and basically he's on like an icy cliff ravine, and he climbs down with his umbrella and then gets stuck, and it ends on a cliffhanger. Beautiful work. I want to see more of that from Disney in the future.
Do you want to know something tragic? For that joke, I rubbed my eyes, and I was cooking with chili earlier, so I just got a load of chili in my eyes. Ever rub chili in your eyes? Not fun.
Not for a podcast.
Right, so going back to the question you asked initially, what are our predictions for the next series of Doctor Who?
I think it's going to be a time travel retelling of Frozen. And Ncuti Gatwa is going to wear a big blonde wig. Millie Gibson's going to be Olaf. And it's going to be 8 episodes of will they, won't they let it go? And you know, the first of the specials, if we link it back to the specials like we did before, bit of foreshadowing, if you like. Mention letting it go. Why would Disney do that?
You know, it would be a big creative swing to base the whole of next series on Frozen, wouldn't it? I mean, if from start to finish it was just a retelling of Frozen, I think that would be a big swing. If you've ever been baffled by a decision, that's the one to be baffled by. And then suddenly at the end, the Balliard's in it, but for no reason at all.
No, I think I because the thing is, because if it is going down the fantasy route, it opens it up to a whole load of stuff that we've probably never even considered Doctor Who going into. I mean, the only thing we know for certain, aside from anything else, is that they meet the Beatles.
Yes, we do know that, don't we?
So is it going to be? Is Ncuti Gatwa going to portray John Lennon? I don't know. Imagine.
Did you say portray or betray?
Both. He could
That would
be
be interesting if he betrayed John Lennon.
He could be, as far as I understand, the Valeyard. And I can't stress from what I understand enough.
Jerome, maybe each member of the Beatles is the Valeyard.
Oh, come together now.
That's a bombshell.
You are my minion. That's
a bombshell. Shit. Let it be.
Jerome, what are your predictions?
What are my predictions? I think that Gallifrey's been destroyed, hasn't it? Again.
It got destroyed again.
Yeah,
they fixed it.
I know. For 2 minutes.
Elastic banded it in the 50th. That's gone wrong again. Fucking time.
So I feel like obviously going to go in search of their origin. Will they find it? Probably not. But I think there will be other mini discoveries along the way. I think that there's going to be a real focus. I think like this companion might be here for a while, I don't know why. I feel like there's going to be a real interest in kind of like that relationship of the orphan aspect. I think there's going to be a long look into that, and maybe more kind of historical references than we thought. I mean, I'd really like to see at some point a couple of actors be brought in to portray the second and third Doctor, because they are, as far as I'm aware, the only 2 Doctors who've not been seen kind of in some form. Because we've obviously had Tom Baker as the curator, we've had Peter Davison, Colin Baker. Like, I think everyone, whether it's been in Tales of a Tales of the TARDIS, or whether it's been something else, they've all appeared. I think that's right, apart from Chris Eccleston, but it's a bit different. So I'd like to see maybe those two Doctors at some point, whether it's in in episodes or whether they're in flashbacks. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting. It's hard to say really, because I think the tone of the show is going to shift dramatically. Because I think one criticism that maybe people were having towards the sort of Capaldi era, kind of going into Jodie's a bit, and maybe with David's second, like the 14th Doctor, is that Doctor Who was starting to become pretty dark, as in just in terms of like and I think they kind of acknowledged it, where they just talk about the weight of the character. You're carrying so much baggage here. You're carrying so much guilt. You need to just let it go. So I think they kind of tried to address that, but I think it was a little bit like, or, there was this thing on Twitter that was going around where Russell T Davies, with the scene with the toy maker and the companions, was basically like sending a message to like Stephen Moffat, being like, you just love killing his assistants off, don't you? You love like finding really horrible, awful ways for them to like end up. And I do think I think it was an interesting place for the character to go, 100%. But I wouldn't be surprised if Disney and Russell and this new series do kind of take it in a more fun direction, like with the musicals and with everything. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it starts to go in a more, I don't want to say light, but a more, I think you know what I mean, just a kind of like a more upbeat, adventurous tone. So it'll be interesting. So maybe they'll drop a lot of the darker stuff, or maybe they'll just contain it to smaller episodes. I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I think there's a big mystery, obviously, behind Millie Gibson's character, which is going to play out over the series. I think it's going to tie into the Doctor's newfound, quite a weird way of describing it, but he doesn't know where he's from. So I think they're obviously really running with the TARDIS child thing. I think that's really good. And I also think that the toy maker is the sort of introduction of a new type of villain, where we've got these out of our universe elemental forces that control different aspects of, I don't know, life. Like the toy maker is the kind of the god of games, and I think that Jinx Monsoon is going to be kind of like the god of music. So I think I think that's going to happen.
Do you think we'll see more? Sorry, go on.
You go first, because I had a couple of other points to bring up.
Well, I was just going to say, do you think we start to see more megastars in Doctor Who?
Yeah,
I think Ryan Gosling's going to be in it. That's my prediction. Ryan Gosling will be in the next series of Doctor Who somehow.
Well, the thing is, Jerome, that's actually a good point, because you look at the way, like, Black Mirror pre-Netflix was big enough as it was. The minute that went global, that completely transformed that show and became this, again, a cultural phenomenon. So would you say that Doctor Who will now almost certainly follow a similar route, where it would be less weird to see these big cameo appearances, bigger than what we've already seen?
It depends, doesn't it? Because I think it's really interesting to see what happens with Doctor Who, because I think inevitably there will be some fans that are turned off by the fact that it expands, because I think some people, for understandable reasons, it's, they've carried it since their childhood or stuff. It's very much who they are. It's a very British thing. It starts to become like super global and trying to like pan to so many different audiences. I think, you will lose some people along the way, but at the end of the day, it's a show. It's continually been evolved, and it evolves with the times. It evolves with the world as well. And I think that it's probably the right decision for stuff they wanted to do. Because Russell said like he'd have done so many episodes differently in 2005 to 2010 if he'd have had the access and the abilities that he now has with Disney, and with not just with the partnership and the way the BBC's expanded. Like if he'd have had that now, he said like so many of those episodes would have been different. It's interesting to kind of play around with, but as long as they keep the core things the same, the character, the fact that they travel around in a magical blue box that goes through time and space, like as long as you keep those core things there, I don't think you can go too wrong. I mean, Doctor Who's already had so many lows at some point. Like, I think like you're allowed to try different things with it because, you know, it's already been to like rock bottom. So I think like you can try to play around with it, you know, because the thing is like I think Paul McGann really, going back to what Mike said, I think he really deserves a shot. I really do. I think because he would be a great Doctor if he was given the chance, even if it was just a cameo in terms of like appearing maybe in certain spin-offs now and then. He deserves a chance, but we have to admit at the same time, TV movie is rough. I mean, have you seen it? Have you seen it? Like, but it is rough. It's like it's really like you can tell he's trying his best in it, and he's actually quite good. But the story, the setting, and I think that was something that maybe worried people because they went on that occasion for a really like America, like New York kind of like the Doctor and the whole like the environment, the vibe of the show. I know it was a movie, but it just changed, and I think it put people off. They weren't ready for it. I don't think they were ready for it. But it does feel quite roughly done when you watch it.
Yeah. Did that cause the long break with Doctor Who that we saw kind of immediately afterwards? Because there wasn't really anything after the movie, was there? There was a big break.
I think the last full series, I'm probably wrong, but I think the last full series was Sylvester McCoy in 1989.
Yeah.
And then the TV movie was in 1996. And then Russell brought it back in 2005. So, yeah, from the TV movie to the 2005, that's 9 years. That's probably the biggest break it had. But it was like the only thing I will give the TV movie, though, one thing it did inspire, I think, for the new series that was to come, was it was the first sort of Doctor Who TV or movie to have like a really detailed TARDIS. Like, as in, like, the expansion, like, the fact it was massive, because McCoy's TARDIS at the beginning of the movie is, like, it's, like, huge. It's almost like a ghost library. It's got candelabras. There's all sorts of, like, stuff going on. It's got different rooms. So it's got, like, different areas to go and explore. And you've never really seen that in the Matrix console before. So you can say, like, they took some stuff from it and ran with it. But I think, in general, it just didn't. It didn't feel like Doctor Who.
The other day, I watched the opening scene with Sylvester McCoy. It's very movie-like. I could see them doing another Doctor Who movie now that it's all like with the Disney money and stuff and the spin-offs.
Yeah.
Like, I can see a movie happening, but it's really, really movie-like, and a movie of that era as well, like the 90s. It's an interesting little period of Doctor Who. We should definitely rewatch it.
I'd be down for that.
Such an interesting slice of Doctor Who, I think.
I think it's the bit where the Doctor gets like gunned down by a series of machine guns.
That's how he died. That's how he regenerated. It's mad. Yeah.
And it's just like, I think everyone like watching it with like their Earl Greys kind of at like 6 p.m. and a British audience were like, okay, this is different. Not sure how I feel about it. But yeah, no, I think we should definitely watch it because I think actually we'd probably recognise more from New Who now in that movie. But I think you have to appreciate at the time it came out, it was such a like, what is this? Like, it was so different.
Let's definitely put that down as one of the next episodes for this podcast.
Yeah,
it's like a live watch along or something like that. That would be amazing.
So before we finish up today, I wanted to bring up a couple of interesting sort of bits of Doctor Who news that I've seen. And the first one is there's an actress, called Susan Twist. I think it's Susan Twist. Yeah. Jerome knows where I'm going with this. Susan Twist was in Wild Blue Yonder as Isaac Newton. She was in the Isaac Newton scene. She's the only other person in that scene outside of David Tennant and Catherine Tate. I don't really remember much about the character. She's talking to Isaac Newton at the beginning of the film, at the beginning of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And she's then also in The Giggle. No, she's in the Christmas special. And she shouts something in the crowd. She's part of the crowd when Ruby's band are playing. Right. Doctor Who has had actors playing multiple different characters in sort of multiple different seasons. I think of an example off the top of my head. Oh, Karen Gillan, for example. Karen Gillan.
Peter Capaldi.
Peter Capaldi, of course, yeah. Karen Gillan was in The Fires of Pompeii as a completely different character, and then came back as Amy Pond. And obviously there was gosh, I can't remember the actress's name, but Gwen from Torchwood was
Yes.
Prima Agyeman as well.
Prima
She was
Agyeman,
in she was in the end of series 2, I think.
Yes,
she was
I
one of
forgot
the
about that.
people decided
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Eve Miles was obviously like introduced in, I think, Christopher Eccleston's third episode, The Unquiet Dead, as a completely, a different character, but they wove that into the plot as saying that they were related, which, was quite funny. But Susan Twist is in these 2 episodes so close together. So I think there was a Radio Times article which was saying, what is going on with Susan Twist's character in Doctor Who? I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if you guys have got any thoughts on that, but I just think is it a coincidence? Doctor Who, with all this Disney money and how popular Doctor Who is, they don't have to cast the same person twice. What's going on?
The one who waits.
Maybe Susan Twist is the one who waits, and I love that. I love the idea of having quite nondescript, barely noticeable cameos for somebody who becomes much, much more important further down the line, and you just think, oh my god, she was this person. So yeah, that's interesting.
If it wasn't for the fact that these episodes were so close together, I think you could write it off entirely, personally. But I think the fact that they're so close together gives it a little bit of credence.
And especially over 2 completely different time periods. Do you know what I mean? I know where you're coming from, Jerome, but I feel like Russell T Davies is smart enough to kind of cast that for a reason. Because it wouldn't be a shortage of actors being available for something like this. People would be... we'd have been all over it if we had the opportunity, let's be honest. One day.
There's definitely history for it. Look at what's his name? Saxon.
Yes.
With the Master.
Yeah.
Where it was like, because I remember actually, like, there's been loads of like more obvious twists, but when Derek Jacobi regenerates into John Sim and Freema goes, I know that voice. And at the time it didn't, and I don't think it hit any of us, but like there was that. And I think at the beginning of that series, like the Prime Minister orders the Christmas invasion, he orders something to be shot down, doesn't he?
It's
and
all the
things. There's
tanks,
all these little things.
Yeah.
For ages. And then it turns out he's Prime Minister and he's been this character all along. Like they have history for it. But I think it will need to, if she's in a 3rd episode, 100%. Or if there's a reference to her. But I think at the moment, there's still a little bit of doubt to it. I think it's still just with the 2. I think at this moment, it's a bit like, could be. I think it's in the could be pile rather than the definite pile at the moment.
I could be wrong, but I think she's on a cast list for a future episode. Could be wrong. I swear I'd read that. In which case, it's 100%.
In which if that's the case, yeah, then definitely 100%.
I'm looking for the IMDb page.
I think, yeah. Could you imagine if it's just 3 different casting directors for Doctor who just haven't done their homework and be like, you're really good. You're really good. Can you come in and just play this character for?
Too late now to go back. The contracts have been signed. Yeah. Susan Twist knew what she was doing. She was like, 3 different contracts for Doctor Who. Oh, whatever.
Yeah. Imagine they like realised at the last minute and were like, oh shit, we need to do something there quickly. You're the Master.
The other thing, just whilst I was looking at that, is there's been rumours. There's always rumours, but there has been quite strong rumours that Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson aren't sticking around past the 2nd series. Now, from an actor's perspective, I don't know why that would be the case. Surely Doctor Who is the biggest opportunity of, yeah, but there have been rumours, but there's always rumours. That's all I can say. I don't know what you 2 think about that.
But the thing is, I can kind of understand because we heard about it obviously right from the get-go with Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper that those filming schedules are full on. It is one big episode after another for about 8 or 9 months. It's a full-on kind of role to portray, particularly with obviously the amount of scripts and characters and that kind of stuff as well. It's a very intense job. So I can kind of understand, and particularly with Ncuti, an actor of his caliber and his success, he probably won't want to. He want to do what he can with Doctor Who, but there's always that kind of intention that there could be bigger and better things on the horizon because he's still very young, still very talented, still very popular. So I can kind of understand if they do leave, why, because we have seen a bit of a track record with that. I think David Tennant was and recently is the longest serving Doctor. Am I getting that completely wrong?
I just think it's such. I think you're right, Dan. But I also think that it's such an exciting time to be Doctor Who. And all the
100%.
I just can't see why they would. I
totally get where you're coming from. I think at the same time, I think this might be one of the slight drawbacks of the Disney deal, in the sense that, not drawbacks the wrong word, but I think because there's going to be so many other opportunities, as in spin-offs, potentials for cameo doctors, all of these things, I think it will be more tempting for the lead actor, whoever that is, who's playing the Doctor, not to stick around as long, because there's always the potential of future work coming back for a spin-off or a cameo. And therefore, if you can sort of go, I've done my bit, do you know what I mean? I'm coming in, I've done my stint, like I can do a few audiobooks along the way. I'll go on and do other things. And I think we have to remember that we're like fans. We love this show. And like, while I'm sure like Ncuti will give everything, because he seems like that sort of performer, I think he'll give everything to the role. We don't know if he was ever like a Doctor Who fan, do you know what I mean, like a proper Doctor Who fan before this. So maybe he's like, yeah, I'm amazed, this is a iconic role in British history, like I'm mega pleased to be doing it. But like Dan says, maybe there's other things kind of along the way. And yeah, like filming, that's the thing, like when it's on screen it looks amazing, doesn't it? But it's like having to do all those filming schedules and not necessarily in a chronological order, we're having to go back and forth all the time. Like it must be really, really stressful.
Do you know
it'd be a shame.
Sorry, do you know who it's probably stressful for? Susan Twist. She's having to do loads, isn't she?
She's rushed off her feet, the poor cow. Absolutely shattered. I'll tell you what, interesting though, what he did say, Jerome, because I'm fairly sure I read it, or it was in an interview or something long ago. It was when Ncuti was announced. Didn't Russell T Davies give him a list of Doctor Who episodes to watch to get a flavour of Doctor Who kind of as an entity? Because I didn't hear that. I'm fairly sure like it was Russell T Davies when he got the part. He said, right, you need to watch this, you need to watch this, you need to watch, and he gave him like a good like half a dozen like episodes to kind of throw himself into, just to get a bit of a feel and stuff like that. And in terms of the filming schedules, I think this must be even more intense than it has been in the past, because if they're now near enough halfway through season 2 and he's only just been sort of revealed now, because the BBC never filmed that far in advance, did they?
It's an interesting point, because from his perspective, he's been the Doctor now for ages, and we've literally only just seen the beginning of it. But I think they were doing that deliberately, because Russell T Davies described it as they were building the empire out. Like, they're not just doing Doctor Who anymore. They're going to do all these spin-offs. It's going to be a regular yearly schedule on Disney Plus. So there had to be a bit of time at the beginning where you weren't seeing much new Doctor Who, but they were building it and they were making it. And so but I guess you're right. He has been the Doctor for a while. I just think the show would really benefit from their lead actor and their lead companion sticking around for more than the obligatory 3 years or whatever it is. I think can you imagine, I think 5 years for like a Doctor and a companion to like, you've got 5 years to get to know these versions of the characters. I just think it would really benefit from that. But like Jerome says, and we've discussed, these spin-offs, I'd love to see Peter Capaldi back in like a gritty 6-part Doctor Who miniseries. Do you know what I mean? I just think it'd be so cool.
Well, what might be interesting, and I know we're probably going to wrap up soon, but what might be interesting is that if with the whole bi-generation thing, which we haven't we've kind of mentioned it this week, but we haven't really mentioned it. I mean, it might get to a point where they do it sort of one-on-one-off system. It like might get there in the future where they go, right, current Doctor, you do a series, and then you take some time off, do whatever other projects you want to do, and then we'll bring back David, or we'll bring back Matt, or whoever's kind of free and wants to crack. I'm not saying they would do that, but that might be an option. Do you know what I mean? Where they kind of go, yeah, it is a really like tough schedule for anyone to kind of fit in. Maybe we kind of equal out the workload, which would be a massive change for the show. Do you know what I mean? It would be a huge change for the show, and I don't think everyone would be on board with it. But it just depends, man. I mean, it's exciting. Either way, it's exciting. It's just how they execute it as usual.
We'll bring back David. We'll bring back Peter. We'll bring forward Jerome.
You know what? You know how it is. With my two companions here.
You see what I did
beside
there?
me.
I did some timey-wimey stuff there. Do you see what I did?
I did.
I think Mike is my beautiful assistant, and Dan is a mechanical dog.
I mean, I think we're all missing the quite obvious point here. What has Doctor Who never been before?
Are you going to say it should be like Frozen again?
Oh, I see. I see what you're doing.
I think it's time for a redhead Doctor, don't you?
I see what you're doing.
I think we've waited long enough for a
Elliot
ginger.
Keith. Elliot Keith.
You can fuck off.
For the viewers, Elliot Keith is going to be the 16th Doctor. Congratulations, Elliot.
Yeah.
You've heard that
Elliot,
live.
He might cast it.
Elliot's a guy that we know. You know, really, if we want to make this podcast, successful, we're really going to have to branch out, from the kind of just mentioning our friends all the time.
You know what? I think we should just call this podcast like Piers, Elliot, and Chibs.
Yeah. If you're ever going up for a Chris Tribble part drama thing, you are fucked, son.
Well, we're going to be besties.
Hey, look, I'm not against selling a story to the Daily Mail like slagging you off. But,
no,
I will.
Mike, I've got a backlog. Ready to go.
You know what's really awkward is when we're having to watch these podcasts back in court when we've both been accused of trying to sue the other. And we'll just be like, what did you mean about that comment? And can you just refer me? Oh, yes, comment 13B. Anyway, this is all very boring. I guess we can't really do any scores, can we? Because we haven't watched any.
We could score the podcast.
0. Moving on.
A lowly 3.
4 out of 10. 4 out of 10.
No, you know what we could do? We could score the 60th as a whole with the Christmas special.
Yeah.
So, if you were to maybe if we have a separate score, one score for expectation, did it meet your expectations out of 10, and then one score for your overall enjoyment. Is that fair? Do you think?
That's a good shout.
Yeah.
Mike, why don't we start with you? Because you stuck me in the deep end at the beginning, so I'm doing it to you now.
Expectation. I'm going to give it a in terms of what I expected it to be, what my score would be. I think 3 out of 10. It was nothing like my expectations, but my actual score, in terms of how much I enjoyed it, or anybody kicks off, is 8 out of 10. Because it surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. Dan?
Similar to you, Mike, I think expectation was probably a 4, but then the actual end result, I'll probably go with a 9, because it really did. It blew out again. You were expecting a certain amount, but it just seemed to completely surpass it to the point where, it genuinely made me fall back in love with Doctor Who again.
I think Wild Blue Yonder might be a 10 out of 10 for me in terms of as a self-contained episode, in terms of surprise, in terms of inventiveness. I'm brings the average up. Jerome?
I think expectation-wise, I'd give it a 6. I think there were some bits I definitely was not expecting, but I was kind of expecting the relationship to be focused on the Doctor and Donna. And I still think that was kind of a core of the 3 episodes. And I think as well with the Christmas special, it was really a sort of it's the Christmas special, it's an opener, we're going to focus on the dynamic between the Doctor and the companion. I think they were all still main facets of them. So I'd give it a 6. I think for my overall enjoyment, I'd say an 8. I'd give it an 8. I think I think it was really good. Yeah, I think maybe it would have been nice to have had an extra surprise thrown in with maybe another Doctor or something a little bit fan service. But in terms of what they were, it was good. I think particular notable bits. Miriam Margolyes as it's gone right out of my head. What's it called?
The
The
Meep.
Meep. Because genuinely, that was a character that could have been so silly, so really silly and stupid. And I think she really found a beautiful kind of sort of menacing quality, like family friendly menacing, but kind of like this has got a bit of edge to it. Totally agree about Wild Blue Yonder. Thought it was great. Really like the fact that I think maybe that was where the expectation was a little bit disappointment, because that's where everyone thought there was going to be a doctor or something. But I think actually the fact it was only those two and they held their own on the screen and their versions of themselves were actually quite scary, I thought.
Really scary. I thought
that was.
I think an all-time great line that's going to echo throughout Doctor Who is "My arms are too long."
My arms are too long. Yeah.
So good. It's so good.
Yeah.
So weirdly scary and so yeah.
And I think as well, it's like taking something that you perceive to be normal and making it abnormal. So it wasn't like an alien; it was like human. Yeah, there is something really kind of horrible about seeing giant hands. And then also Neil Patrick Harris as the toy maker smashed it.
He'll come back. He has to come back.
Yeah. The only thing the only thing that annoyed me about that is that one, we didn't see more of him, and two, just that ending. It just felt really. It was like it just felt like we've been building this up to the bi-generation, totally understandably, and then forgot we had a villain that we needed to deal with.
You know what I mean?
It was Doctor Who all over again.
Yeah. It kind of like it was brilliant all the way up to the bi-generation, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, we need to get rid of him. How do we do that?" Oh, I know. We'll beat him at catch, which was the most Doctor Who thing ever. But yeah,
I just love the thought that they were just kind of there going, and yeah, the bi-generation is great. Then one of them just looked at the clock and just went, "Shit, we've got 5 minutes."
It's like we were discussing. Just make it longer. Just make it longer. Like have a better resolution. You know?
Yeah. I would have. For me, it would have been better if he, I don't know, just decided that somehow he'd lost the game. I don't know, or just kind of went, "I'm going to disappear for a bit, but I'll be back." I think that would have been better, where it was like, "You'll see me again," sort of thing, and then just decided to leave. But yeah, I don't know. And also Bernard Cribbins.
Yes.
I mean, I think that was the one. I think that for me was one of the most disappointing parts, because I was really, really hoping that he would have appeared more and they would have had the opportunity to. But he very selfishly died. So unfortunately, they didn't have the chance to really revive him again too soon.
My God, that's getting cut. That's getting cut so hard.
It's in jest. We've been
cancelled in South Korea, Brazil, Uruguay. This worldwide podcast. It's out of here.
Look, you know how much I love Bernard Cribbins. He's an absolute delight. God rest his soul. And I just wish that for all the build-up, for all the behind-the-scenes stuff we'd seen in the years preceding the 60th, there was a bit more of that, because that one moment, as lovely as it was, just I wished it was more. I just wish we had a bit more of him.
I just think Bernard Cribbins, I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he did it on screen, but every time I saw him in the 14th Doctor, but mainly when he was doing his big work with David the first time out, I don't know how he did it, but every time I saw him on screen, I was just like, I wish he were my granddad. He just carried that sort of like, I don't know, that just innocence is probably the wrong word, but like that just warmth about him that I was like, you're just so lovely. Like, it's a thing. Also, that's someone else who's appeared in multiple Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's great. He's such a good actor. He makes everything so believable. Much missed. Right then, I think we're done for today. Good podcast, boys. Let's wrap it up.